Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Honorable Chair and EXCOM members of IEEE Computer Society Bangladesh Chapter, senior members and members of IEEE Computer Society, respected teachers and reviewers from different universities in home and abroad, students and all participants. Assalamu alaikum and good evening. IEEE Computer Society Bangladesh Chapter brings you an informative webinar titled How to Review a Paper, Points for Reviewers and Authors, that will be conducted by Professor Dr. Atiqur Rahman Ahad, senior member of IEEE, specially appointed Associate Professor, Osaka University, Japan, and Professor, University of Dhaka, Bangladesh. This session is supported by IEEE Computer Society Bangladesh Chapter, Team Spark. Reviewing a paper is a collaborative process to evaluate a manuscript submitted to the published either in a conference or a journal. The outcome of a peer review gives authors opportunity to improve their work and allows the conference organizers or editors to assess the paper's suitability for publication. As a reviewer, one can get an early view of the exciting new research happening in the concerned field. Moreover, the webinar helps authors as well as to understand the paper review process that will be helpful to improve their manuscripts. Though we know Professor Atiq Ahad very well, I present his significant contributions to the scientific community. Professor Dr. Atiq Ahad is a senior member of IEEE. Currently, he is serving as a specially appointed associate professor in Osaka University, Japan. Professor Ahad authored 4 books in Springer, published more than 130 peer-reviewed papers, presented 80+ keynote and invited talks in prestigious conferences, and achieved 28 awards. Moreover, he is an editorial board member of Scientific Reports in Nature, associate editor in Frontiers in Computer Science, editor in International Journal of Effective Engineering, Encyclopedia of Computer Graphics and Games, editor-in-chief in IJCVSP, General Chair, 9th ICIEV, 4th IVPR, and 2nd AVC. Guest editor of Pattern Recognition Letters Elsevier, JMUI Springer, JHE Hyundai, and several journals. Now, I would like to request Professor Atiq Ahad to conduct the webinar titled How to Review a Paper, Some Points for Reviewers and Authors. So I'd like to start Professor Dr. Atiq Ahad, your webinar. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, dear participants.
Sir, excuse me, sir, if I interrupt for a while, Professor Atiq Ahad.
And many teachers here. Actually, I mentally
there is some interrupted voice from you, sir. Interrupted voice. And I just see that our chair of IEEE Computer Society has joined. I'd like to request Professor Dr. Muhammad Abdul Razzaq, chair of IEEE Computer Society, to say few words for introducing this webinar. Professor Dr. Muhammad Abdul Razzaq.
Thank you, Tariq, for your nice introduction for Professor Atiq Ahad. In this August evening, the distinguished keynote speaker, Professor Dr. Muhammad Atiqur Rahman Ahad, my dear colleagues, and all participants from home and abroad, I do welcome you all to this session. Reviewing a research paper is a professional contribution for the society, and reviewing a particular paper basically helps the author to correct his or her contents and improves the technical writer skills of the authors. So if we be able to give very good review for a submitted research paper, be it accepted or rejected does not matter, that will be a great contribution for our young scientists and fellow colleagues. So keeping this importance in mind, I believe today's discussion will help us a lot. I personally saw Professor Atiq Ahad to put his highest level of efforts to increase the quality of the research papers he is used to handle in the past few years. So I believe he will wholeheartedly share all his experiences uh, by himself and learning from the community. So, keeping these few words, I appreciate Professor Atiq Ahad for rendering his time and efforts in this direction, and I believe we will have a great session in this evening and learn a lot for future uh, better contribution to the technical community. Thank you very much for joining here. Assalamu alaikum.
Sorry for the interruption. Sir, I would like to request to start your webinar. And there is some bandwidth problem, I think, from your side. Could you please off your video kindly?
Okay. Um, Stop video. All right. Okay. আমি শুরু করছি। Thank you so much. I would like to appreciate thanks the organizers, IEEE Computer Society Bangladesh chapter, and the secretary and president of IEEE Computer Society Bangladesh chapter for introducing me a bit. Um, Basically, it's a very difficult topic. And I feel a bit nervous to talk on this because sometimes there's a very serious issue. So, how to review a paper? Points for reviewers and definitely for authors. And let's discuss. I mean, I'll raise some points, and if you after the presentation, we can share because we have many teachers here. So from them, we can get new findings, new ideas, and more ideas, and so on. So my name is Ahad, Atiqur Rahman Ahad. I'm from University of Dhaka, Bangladesh. At this moment, I'm in a way forced to stay at Osaka University for some reasons. So here, the purpose of this talk to initiate some discussions and sharing ideas. Actually, I have been thinking for this kind of presentation for several months, especially I have started to prepare the slides for the last 3 months. Then I thought that I should share the ideas because this is very important, and we have more than 10 international conferences related to computer science and EEE and IT in Bangladesh only, and other conferences. And we have more than 150 universities in Bangladesh, many young teachers and senior teachers, and we are helping for different conferences and journals. So this is important that we share some ideas because I'm involved with something and then I have seen it is better to discuss this issue. Number two is that we have many students, they can know, then I can prepare myself through this process. So I'll give some examples from some good journals I am involved with. And I intentionally kept some of those repetitions because many issues are repeated, but I'll put it again and again so that it gives us a clear idea. Reviewers try for better review, be a judge, and authors to know how you may be tortured by the reviewers. Okay. So about me, I thought that initially no introduction, but Dr. Tariq, he mentioned about me, but still I just give something so that you can get a confidence on me that I am working as one of the editorial board member of Scientific Reports Nature. So through this process, I learned a lot. But Frontiers in Computer Science, I'm an associate editor, and basically if I say that the Frontiers is more difficult in terms of review process and others than Scientific Reports Nature. And I'm involved with a few other journals as well. And especially while working with as a guest editor for several journals, I learned a lot. Especially in 2013, when I was the only guest editor for pattern recognition letters. It was a huge, stressful experience for me, but I learned a lot through this process. And of lots of kicks from reviewers, and then those are learnings. And I hope that based on this, I'll try to give some ideas. Initially, I put some points from the Optical Society of America. We know that they don't use anymore America. They just say the Optical Society, which is OSA, a very old publisher and top one. So what they said in their website, based on whatever I put directly from those websites. So or review systems and so on. So who can or should become a reviewer? It becomes an issue that should I engage a non-PhD students? Most of the journals or conferences, they allow non-PhD students. If they are graduate students, sometimes they allow. So for they say that postdocs, okay, early career researchers, definitely, senior level researchers, of course, technical managers without PhD, but they are working in the industry for a longer period and expert on that field, so they will be allowed. And of course, grad students, graduate students in Japan, grad students means they do masters by research, or they do research as well. Most of the top universities are mid universities. So that's why graduate students are involved, and many professors, they hand over to the students to review some papers so that they can learn through these processes. So we can engage grad students according to the Optical Society of America. Now, anyone who cannot do a review because relevant research on that topic and publishes in technical literature. So sometimes we have grad students, they have engaged them as well. If you are a student, and or if you have no reasonable knowledge, it's I mean important that you decline requests, because whenever you submit to a conference or a journal, your data is recorded in the database. So next time the committee members, associate editors, or guest editors, or whoever, I mean, when they want to search for some reviewers, the database gives some names, and names are taken from the keywords or from the previous authors. So they can make mistake because they don't know you in person. So they consider that you are an expert. So that's why you are invited. But if you are not, then please decline the request. I mean, don't feel happy that, oh, I'm a reviewer of this good journal or good conference. Don't do that, because it's not a justice thing for you. Okay, so this is important. Another thing is that some crap journals, they regularly request anyone on any topic to review a paper. Just, I mean, spam those, I mean, emails, also, I mean, groups. Next one is, how can I find a reviewer? This is an important issue. So author database, which I mentioned, that they make mistakes. Even I found that my undergrad students with me, they have paper in IEEE Access, and they assigned my students. So as I mentioned, this is just mistake because they don't know. Account profile. Sometimes research interests are used by editors to match reviewers with papers. So when I get a good paper, and I do not know the exact best people, I search and find 10, 15 people. I make an Excel file and put those names based on their expertise and from the related papers, and then I invite one by one. So this is another important point, that you search and keep your records, so that in future you can also engage them when it matters, because some topics are very much I mean, uncommon to the community. So you need someone who is good at manuscript references. Sometimes from the references you can get the reviewer names. If you are known or good, then you get lots of requests from others. But but this is also challenging. It's like scratch the back, like you do and I do too. So in our community, it's like this, that I mean, if I request Shamim Kaisar to review a paper, and then when he will request me, then it's very difficult to decline, even though you are busy. So we do like that. Now we have some professional group, paid service even, and they help to find reviewers appropriately. So one of the groups called Toronto Paper Matching System, you can take their service, and Microsoft CMT, which is a conference management toolkit, they have this option as well. Now, steps of peer review, for example, how OSA does. So when we submit a paper, we are happy that it's done. But what next? First, staffs, they do quality checking. If they say that there is, I mean, mistakes or some things are missed, then they send to the authors and so on. After that initial editorial assessment, that one of the associate editors or editorial board member, they check, and you can get desk reject. So desk reject is, I mean, very painful. And one point is that if you get desk reject, as an author, you can fight with the editorial team that why did you reject this paper, because is it out of scope or blah, blah, blah. So you can check. One point I found in journals which are very flat, like IEEE Access or Scientific Reports Nature, that they accept anything. Now, when you submit a paper, they request associate editors one after another. And after declining for 3, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, even for 2 months, then the staff say that it is out of scope of the journal, which is very wrong. Basically, it's not out of the scope. The point is that they requested some related people to manage the review, but they were busy on that time, so nobody took the responsibility, so they said that out of scope. So this is one of the reasons. So you can fight, this is I'm saying for the authors, that when you get desk reject. Next point is that when the initial editorial assessment is okay, then the associate editor or that, I mean, guest editor, they involve some expert reviewers. Reviews done, then editor takes the final decision based on comments, and we'll see a lot. Don't just trust a reviewer, because not all reviewers are good. And this is number one. Number two, read the comments and check the paper, and then find whether enough arguments and logical for accept or reject. That is very important. And engage more experts if you get less comments from some reviewers, or no arguments for accepting the paper or rejecting the paper. And red list those careless reviewers. If someone is like, let's say that, oh, good paper, I mean, this is I mean, very strange that how can you say good paper and then just accept it? There is nothing called good or bad. I mean, you should write something to improve the paper. And racism is real. This is very important. I mean, we live in a society, still racism exists, and in academic domain, it is more behind the scene. We can't see. Like, for example, if a paper is from developing countries, then reviewers from some other part, they become suspicious, or they say that, oh, it's not good, or something like that. Or sometimes they don't trust that much, and sometimes we have to argue, especially in engineering field, it's not that much, but in medical aspects or other fields, it's more. So we have to fight with them. I mean, don't hesitate to fight with the reviewers, I mean, or associate editors or editors and so on. So this is the process that reviewers, I mean, review or judge, associate editor or guest editor will check the paper and the review comments, and based on this, take a decision. And finally, the editor-in-chief takes the final decision. And one point is very important, that even though the reviewers are accepting a paper or giving minor revision or major revision, associate editor can reject the paper, because if they find that there are something which is not that much suitable, because some people cannot judge the quality or level of the conference or the journal. So they review very lightly, which is not good, because when we judge people, we judge based on the quality. So if a journal has impact factor 3 or 5, that is, it means that the journal needs very high quality paper. high quality of assessment, and so on. So this is very important. And another point is that even if the guest editor accepts a paper with revision, editor-in-chief can bypass it and argue with the guest editor or associate editor that why the hell you accept it? What are the reasons, or why did you reject it? I mean, what are the strong ground for that purpose? So this is important. Behind the scene, these things are going on. So of course, in quality journal or quality conference cases. Next point is that, I mean, this is Optical Society of America's, that submission, quality check by staff, editor assessment, and then if not this reject, then you go for reviews and blah blah blah. So finally you get the paper accepted with major revision or minor revision, or reject, and rejection is not a problem, and revise or resubmit, and you get more time. Now let's go for the assessment, that who can become a peer reviewer. We know that according to Optical Society of America, even grad student can do, of course, postdocs and researchers and so on, they can do. But some other journals, we'll see later on, that they don't allow that grad students. They say that one must be PhD to be a peer reviewer. The next one is that who may perform the initial editorial assessment, including a relevance assessment or of manuscript. So definitely not the editor-in-chief, staff, and so on. But we have to make sure that there are some business publishers or journals. Over there, the staffs, paid staffs, are doing this kind of things. I start with M or H, you understand which publishers and so on. I don't like those, even though I have papers over there. But the point is that, I mean, the staffs deal it. And I heard from one IEEE fellow, big guy, and he said that those journals have their own reviewers who check basically on the sanity check. Like sanity check means that, I mean, overall, just looking at the paper and then language and other things. And this is not good. So that's why we have to make sure that where we submit, where we publish our works. So manuscript undergo initial quality relevance assessment by the editor-in-chief or deputy editor, who may reject the manuscript if does not meet the quality or standard of the paper. The next one is that which of the following is not a way in which Optical Society of America editors identify peer reviewers? I mean, I mentioned it before, so this is just like a exam for you. And then one important point is that co-authorships is considered a conflict of interest between an author and a reviewer. So make sure that, I mean, even the past co-authors cannot be non-related or fake reviewer recommendations, because we know that as an author, when we submit a journal, sometimes they ask us to mention 4 reviewers, I mean, and so on. So, and it is a problem for young researchers. They ask that, how can I find 4 reviewers? It means that if you cannot find 4 experts related to your work, it means that you do not know the work. You do not know the background, because you must know who are other groups working on the same topic. Definitely you studied those papers, some of those papers, and then based on this you progressed your work. Definitely you compared your work with other good papers. So that means that you can refer those reviewers, those papers, and then find the authors who have PhD or senior. Then you mention those authors' email addresses and so on as a recommendation. But I know that in IEEE, they banned one group of authors, because one of the authors, authors who submitted the paper, he put some fake reviewers not related to the field, and some friends, so that if in case the journal authority assign them, it can be accepted easily. So this kind of cheating was understood by the associate editor, and then that IEEE good journal transaction banned that group. But and then it was a big problem for that group. Anyway, so this is very important, that don't try to do that. Of course, one tricky strategy is that put the names very high profile people, so that they do not get time to review your paper. Okay, so this is one strategy. Blindness. We know that single blind peer review means authors do not know who the reviewers are, but mm, reviewers can identify the authors. Most of the journals, even though, I mean, in your PDF paper, you don't put the author details, but definitely when you submit, you put author information and others, and they make final PDF. And in the final PDF, you have all author issues. So it means that, I mean, reviewers can understand and can see who are the authors. But in some conferences, there is no scope to check. So that's why this is one important point. Double blind is that nobody knows who are the authors and who are the uh, mm, uh, reviewers. And finally, some journals publish the names of associate editor or reviewers during the publication. So for example, this is one example that being an associate editor, my name is here, and then reviewed by X and Y. So when it was published in Frontiers, then they put their name, not before. So this is all, I mean, some journals do. Review criteria. For OSA, the scope is important. So maybe described as technical scope of a journal or appropriate content, and whether the journal matter falls within the scope of the journal. So authors, when you submit, look at the journal's scope and then see whether your work is well fit for that journal. Otherwise, it will take time. They will not find appropriate reviewers, and it can be rejected instantly. Number two is that you can search that whether there are some papers on similar titles you have, so that you can also argue that, okay, this journal published similar papers, so my work is similar, so I can submit here. So this is another point. Significance. Maybe term is novelty, originality, or impact or significance, and whether your paper contains new results that will have a significant impact in the field. Even though you do not have significant impact in the field, but if you have lots of analysis, then it can be considered. Technical content. Technical content is whether your work is technically valid, and whether the, analysis or results support the conclusions and the title of the paper and so on. So this is very important. Presentation is of course important. Papers, grammar, organization, figures and tables. If there's a low quality, you do a very poor way, by looking at the impression is gone, that it's not good. So one of the strategies to make it better is to use LaTeX. If you use LaTeX template, then automatically many things are much better, and many formatting issues are gone. So it looks better. So use LaTeX, and all journals and conferences, normal standard journals and conferences, they have LaTeX templates. So explore LaTeX. LaTeX is not so difficult, and you can do it. Supplementary materials. Sometimes we need to upload extra materials for extra visualizations or tabular data, or sometimes code, or some previous publications. Like for example, if I published a conference paper or journal paper, and now the submitted paper is an extension from the previous one, you can put as a supplementary material, so that reviewers can check both and become happy that, okay, it's an advancement of the previously published work. Now look at the Nature scientific reports case. So when you get an reviewer invitation, first they say that you will gain direct access to manuscript and review form if you accept. If you don't, then if you decline, then there is another option. Now, before you submit the report, take a moment to think. This is according to scientific reports Nature. They say that take a moment to think. Why? Because if you receive this report, would you find it constructive? And is it the paper writing is courteous, good and professional? And whether the focus of the content of the paper, you have to focus on the content of the paper, not the authors. As I mentioned, racism or biasness is there. So behind the scene, human being, we are still not so good. So that's why, I mean, it happens. So that's why they say that don't consider who are the authors, consider the content of the paper. And finally, we reserve the right to remove any inappropriate language from your report. That means that if reviewers write any bad word or strong inappropriate word, then editor can, editor or editor-in-chief can remove those inappropriate language from that. Now, look at the case that when you submit, usually we see that the manuscript file, the file name, and the cover letter, and so on. So you make sure that your paper is written in such a manner that, prathom dekhaye bhalo laga, you fall in love. In the cover letter, you can Google and get more information how to write a smart cover letter. Cover letter is important, and reviewers or associate editors, we read especially the associate editors, we read the cover letters to see whether any points. So authors usually highlight the core work within 2 or 3 sentences, and sometimes they recommend some reviewers to assign, and some group they say that don't assign to X, Y, or Z because maybe they are enemy group, or they submitted before and they may not like it or something like this. So they argue that why you do not assign to Professor X, because they are they don't like our paper, or they don't like our methodology, or they have different policy, and so on. In upper level, in top level, this is this kind of arguments and so on are going on. Past history of the paper, we can see whether it was accepted partially in the past, so you can mention in the cover letter. Now, next, your previously rejected paper's title is not, the subject of the PDF is different. Because, for example, I found this paper, it was written censors, then some number. So my mind says maybe it was submitted before in a censor journal and you got rejected, then you instantly submitted to this journal. So that's why make sure that you make some good name. In my case, I sometimes do that original work or blah blah blah. Okay. Next one, feedback for the editor. Authors cannot see. So this is important. You can write anything, and you can be you can use very strong word about the paper, but for authors, be kind, because many young researchers, they don't want to be demoralized and so on. Feedback for the your recommendation for authors, you recommend clearly, so that and constructive advice. Give clear and constructive advice. Write more, do not write a few words or a few sentences. Okay. And don't say that serialize the references, because it is the duty of the press people to do that. So it's not the issue of the author sometimes. So without taking multiple routes, so make it as constructive, as clear as possible, so that you don't say, oh, you do this and next time the authors review improve the paper, submit the paper, and then again you say, oh, no, 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 you have to do this and this and this again, and so on. So stop doing this kind of thing, so that authors do not need to do multiple rounds of revision. Don't be afraid if paper is a crap. You know that this is a bloody stupid paper, but still, unless they do any kind of cheating, guide them softly so that they can learn. This is important, especially for developing countries. Many supervisors or professors are not helping that much, not giving the time to the students, so students make mistakes. But again, students should learn how to write a good paper and what are the common mistakes to avoid, so that when you submit, when you serve the food on the plate, it looks very good. Another guideline from scientific reports nature is the study design appropriate to answer the research question. We know that when we do research or when we submit a paper, and in the introduction or in the related work or the background, we mention some of the research question that or goals that we want to achieve. So whether your and are the conclusions supported by the evidence you presented in the paper, the methods sufficiently described to allow the study to be repeated. We know that a good research means reproducibility, that you another person can read the paper, implement the method, and this is called a good paper. It's not like you find medicine in the dream, okay, and so on. So is the use of statistics or treatment of uncertainties appropriate? Because some research we have uncertainties or probabilistic issues, so make sure that whatever you put, those kind of things are well explained and so on. And it's not only for the authors to do like that, reviewers to check this kind of things. So in another way, authors should write properly so that reviewers can feel satisfied. Sometimes you can write this kind of statistics like that, that in this paper the data are analyzed, or this result is properly done so that there is I mean no uncertainties or this kind of limit and so on. Is the presentation of the work clear? It is very important that you write a paper so that it's like storytelling. It's not so easy, but it takes time. So if you write a paper and then read it 5-10 times, then every time you can tune and make it better. This is for the authors. But what about the reviewers? Reviewer will read the paper, and if while reading the paper reviewers cannot get the paper smartly, then reviewer will feel not so happy with the paper. Make sure that images in the manuscript are not manipulated, not modified or changed. So no fabrication, no, forgery. So this is important. And similarly, authors should check when they submit that images are in good quality and so on. Now, you answer all those, the previous mentioned points. If there is anything wrong, you explain that these are the problems, these are the problems, and so on. If you cannot uh, un, explain or judge but the statistics or treatment of uncertainty is appropriate or not, and some other things, you can clearly mention that I cannot judge, or I am not expert, or you can say that this issue is not relevant to this, cannot know. Don't mention reviewers that you do not know this or that. Okay, you can tell the editor-in-chief. Editor-in-chief will read those points, and then he can assign another reviewer related point as a redirection. So when you get rejection, okay, find a way to improve the paper. So don't be upset, okay? Be constructive and thorough to allow the authors to prepare a revision ready for acceptance. I mean, you review the paper in such a manner so that authors can improve the paper to get it accepted, okay? Next one is that if you reject a paper, remember, if you reject a paper, explain why the submission does not meet our editorial criteria for publication, because different journal has different kinds of strategy, and of course based on the quality of the journal, based on the quality of the conference, the level will vary. So you make sure that you do like that. Before you submit your review, please review your review thoroughly. I mean, don't just submit. I know that, I mean, we do last moment work many times, especially for conference, because we are very much under tight schedule. So we do quickly, but it is important that before you submit the review, you check what you have written for the authors to improve the paper. So this is important. And consider including ethical concerns regarding experiments. If there is animal or hospital issues or healthcare issues or other thing, so make sure that whether there is any ethical issue. Number two is that any disclosed conflict of interest or competing interest. In earlier lectures on research methodologies and ethics, you can see my website and YouTube channel, you can find some of those lectures in Bangla as well as in English. So over there, what do you mean by conflict of interest or competing interest? This is important, especially in medicine field or related. This is important, or business, because sometimes we anyway, I just proceed on because there are many slides. Concerns regarding plagiarism or publication ethics, another point. Now, this is, I mean, something like this you do. Sometimes they say accept or reject or revise. Sometimes major revision, minor revision. Sometimes there are options that reject without review. Like, for example, Elsevier's patent recognition letters, they have this option. Now come to the comments to the authors. So earlier we mentioned about what you write to the editor. Now, please include all comments for the authors in this box and be constructive, as I mentioned, and thorough, and explain why. Now look at another journal, Applied Soft Computing. So sometimes if you are invited, a reviewer may not know. And also, oh, by the way, you can check here. Here you can see sometimes by default author option or reviewer option or managing editor option. So you click here and get the reviewer option. Then you can see whether any paper is assigned to you, and you can click the action link and you can get something like this: view submission, view abstract, agree to review. First, you can check the paper, the full PDF, and then if you feel that it is comfortable with you, then you can click the agree to review. Hello, am I okay?
Yeah, we
Yes.
can hear you.
Okay, okay,
But your share slide is off.
okay. I do. Maybe make me host again, please. Oh, okay, anyway.
So you
Uh,
just have to share your screen again.
okay, okay, I'll do. Mm, share, but I'm already, because suddenly I found that it jumped from my case anyway. So I was in this slide that I mean, for example, you click here and then agree to review, and then based on this you can check the paper and so on. Now, reviewer instructions for this journal, they say that you look I mean, specific and detailed comments on originality, scientific quality, relevance to the field of the journal, because sometimes you find after reading the paper that these, so you can mention it, and of course presentation. And
Hello, sir.
hi. So I was cut, is it?
Yes, it's okay now, sir. You can start.
SWOT analysis, that strength, weakness, and so on. So this kind of information is important. For authors, you check that your paper, reviewers also need to check what are the strength of the paper, and revision is necessary, and indicate why a paper is unacceptable, or if it is acceptable, then what are the important things to add. And this is very important, not very important, but this is too much for the reviewers, that authors especially appreciate it if you cite references supporting your comments. Like, I mean, I'm giving some review comments, and if I put some good references, not my personal references, remember, I found that some of the reviewers put 5 or 6 of their reference, that authors must put those references in the paper, which is very, very bad. But to mention that if there are some any important point you mention, put the references, so it's like you are writing a paper. Okay, so this is important, and if you do, then this is good. Recently one of my students reviewed a paper. He added 14 plus references in his review comment and put why this is important. Such a good review, but I understand that in the future he cannot commit that much time. For the editor, again, the confidential comments you have to add. Never do nice work, well done. You can write, that's fine. But if this is the only comment, you can go to the hell because and you do the reject it in the editor. I found this kind of thing. So this is totally, I mean, irrational. I mean, how can you write good words and then finally reject it? And when an author get the review result, they say that the paper is rejected even though the review comment is good. So don't do like that. If you reject it, make sure that there are some comments by which authors can be satisfied, because comments to the editor, confidential comments to the editor, are not known or seen by the reviewer. So this is an issue. Please summarize what the submission comprises. This is sometimes we write in 2 or 3 sentences. We mention in the review that this paper is about this and this and this. And it is also important to write. And what are the key observations and your own analysis of the main findings. Okay, I know that some of the people say that if there are so many tasks, why should I review a paper? But reviewing is helping the community, because your paper, my paper, is reviewed by others, and those volunteer works are progressing the research community. Suggest major or minor changes, and many journals, they put 2 separate lists, that what are the minor changes you mentioned, what are the major changes you mentioned. Okay, so these are important. References used is important, as I mentioned earlier. Comments to author, make sure that confidential messages that you put on the editor should not be added for the author. Okay, don't mention in the review comment that, oh, it can be accepted or it can be I mean rejected. It is usually not to better not to do unless you are super confident. And another point is that it can be a best paper award. I mean, don't mention in the, or for the authors. Don't just copy and paste the same information in both cases, for editor and reviewer. I found in many cases that whatever they wrote for the authors, they also copy the same to the editor. So it's extra burden for the editor or program chair to look into that. Editor can read comments for authors, so don't copy in both cases. Sometimes highlights and graphical abstracts, I'll mention in later slide. And another point is that if you cannot finish on time, remember, if you cannot finish on time, just reply to the editor or editorial board that you need more time. I know that we rarely do that. But we just forget, and what happens that auto reminder or staff gives us reminder to do that. So that's why it's not so important from my side. But now some journals, they have highlights and graphical abstracts. So when you submit, you have to mention within few words or characters 4 or 5 points. So this is required. For example, pattern recognition letters in Elsevier, they mention that you must write this kind of information, and make sure that you remove these part. Make sure that you remove these part, like you should, I mean, because this is journal's point. So you remove this part and just mention 4 or 5 key points highlighting meaningful, accurate representation of the article. Sometimes reviewer read those, and if they are satisfied with that, they will go further. Another point, authors, that graphical representation, even though this is optional, but basically here they put like some image or some graphs so that you can get an overview of the paper. So if there are options, why don't you put those 2 things so that reviewers can get at the beginning and feel happy. And reviewers also should check this kind of information if these are available. And make sure that you consider reference value, technical content, originality, weakness, compactness, because some journals, they make sure that the paper limits are there. Page limits. So page limits, when there are page limits and you write introduction and related work too much or too many references, authors or unnecessary tables or images and equations which are not that much relevant or not much important. So those are not good. So make sure that you write compact way based on the limit. Okay, this is important. I found that some of the presenters, they present 10 minutes presentation, they put related work and background 4-5 minutes, which is meaningless. So in the paper, authors should do like that. As a reviewer, if you find that unnecessary things are more, then you tell clearly that reduce that part or merge 2 of them or 3 of them into one, and highlight your method and analysis and results as much as possible. And then comments to the editor again, that potential to cause interdisciplinary discussion. This is another, some journals they mention that whether a paper can ignite discussion in multidisciplinary fields. If that can be possible, it can be more interesting for the community. So that's why when authors write, because I know that there are many authors, young authors, when you write a paper, make sure that whether your paper can be useful in another domain or in another field or another subject area, so that it can be felt in different direction and so on. Degree of specialization. How easily can the gist of the paper be understood by one who is not specialist in the subfield of the subject? So this is also important, that I mean, if a paper is too specialized, reviewers need to mention that, okay, the paper is too specialized, or it's a shallow or trivial or right or so on. Okay, don't make it too specialized if the, unless the journal is a very focused journal. Okay, but again, this is a very broad spectrum topic, so you do whatever you feel. Now sometimes you have award issues, so make sure that what kind of journal or conference you are dealing, and whether that level of paper can be suitable for award or editor's choice and so on, and what an author must change and what are the point nice to change. Nice to change means if they can change, that's fine, but must change issues should be there, so that if those must change points are not added, the paper will be finally rejected. Does the article match your expert area? This is also important. We need to know how to decline or refuse. Okay, that's very important, especially young boys and girls. You must know that how to refuse another boy or girl's proposal. Okay, otherwise your life will be hell and playing with different people. So make sure. Only accept if you feel you can provide a high quality review. Otherwise, you can politely say no. I know that those who are program chairs or editors, they say that please, still you do give some basic points about the paper and so on, because we need multiple reviews and so on. Conflict of interest, make sure that whether there is anything. For example, if you know an author, one of the authors, or if you are from the same department or same university, or if you have a bias or racism, like you hate someone or some country, unfortunately, which is not good, and you may have some kind of potential issue, then you can write to the editor that I don't like that group, or I belong to them, or I know them, so it is better not to review that paper. And it happens that some of my friends, they know me, so they select me as one of the reviewers, and the authority assigns me to review the paper. And if I know them and I feel that I may have some kind of biasness, oh, this is my friend's paper or Rajak Bhai's paper, Shamim Kaiser's paper, should I accept or reject? On that case, you can say that I have conflict of interest potential, and I don't know whether I can do justice, so forget about this, I want to decline, and so on. I know that if you have no time, say no time, but we always say, please don't say no, okay, because we need your help. Before you accept and decline an invitation to review, another important point is that sometimes we do not know, especially young researchers, what are the basic principles to review a paper. There are some free tutorials for most of the top publishers. Look at those. And as I mentioned, respond to the invitation quickly. If you do, say, yes, I'll do, and then take your time. If you don't do, then decline quickly, because I mean, you are one of the authors. Your papers, you know that if it is late, how you feel. So that's important. Sometimes what we do, we give alternative reviewer suggestions that at this moment I'm busy, but my student or my former colleague or someone else can review. So there are comments where you can put those alternative reviewers names, and that is very important. Help the community. Okay, now look at here. And authors, please check website, because when you submit a paper and forget, you may not know. It happened to me as well. You may not know that the paper has some kind of reply, and the email is not checked or in the spam folder. And you need to address something, you need to change something before the paper is processed. So make sure that you, after you submit a paper in top journals or conferences, you regularly check the website. What are the status of the paper? Now look at here. There are 4 papers, 3 are under review, but 1 paper with editor still. See, 15 days. With editor doesn't mean that editor didn't assign. It means that editor assigned or requested some reviewers, but none of their reviewers agreed already. So that's why it's not under review. So if you see with editor, you have the right to request the editor-in-chief or staff that my paper is here for 15 days, is still not assigned by a reviewer. May you check? Because sometimes we assign to reviewers and we forget. We wait for their reply, and because all are volunteer work, so we forget. Then by this time it gets too late, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, unnecessary. But if we get reminder, then we say, oh, okay, let me check again, and then we try to change another reviewer, or we try to request another one, and so on. Another point is that don't share. You must not share the idea or let alone the paper itself or data and so on to anybody, because as a reviewer, this is a very secret thing to you. And even after finalizing your review, you must not share with anybody. When it will be published, then you can know and you can share. That is another point. But if you need to do something very special, of course, you can ask to the editorial board, and no editor will allow you to share. Okay. The next point is that it is important for authors as well, that if an experiment, check the method section first. This is, they say that if an experiment, check the method section first. And see whether there are some major problems. And if those are flagged and mentioned, like if there is any unsound methodology or pseudoscience or discredited method, like, there is no way to prove it smartly through scientific method. Missing processes known to be influential on the area of reported research. Conclusion, if the conclusion is contradicting with the results or statistical or qualitative evidence you put in the paper. Sometimes we mention our results. In the conclusion, we say, wow, we did this. Basically, your conclusion is lying or cheating, because your results are not showing that what you have done is correct. Another point is that when there are some analytical papers, make sure that you examine the sampling report for authors, of course, for reviewers, and so on. And similarly, systematic data analysis is important. Examine the data quality, because data quality is important. So for authors, when you submit, you do this, and also reviewers, make sure that you do this. So when the method is sufficient or good, you are happy, then examine the data in terms of figures or tables or images. Remember, for authors or reviewers, that if you put similar information in a figure and then in the table, it's meaningless. Why do you put 2 different things? Or you put some information in a table and then you do the same thing as a graph. If you put on a graph, then you don't need the table, and vice versa. So make sure that you avoid redundancy. Critical issues in a research data, make sure that whether the data points are enough or not. Sufficient data should be there. Statistically significant or not. unclear data tables or not. These are the important points. And finally, not finally, ethical consideration if there are patient or animal data or children and others or autistic children, and those cases are done. So you need to get the approval from the ethical approval committee of your university. If you do not have, at least you can make a paper, and if you Google, you can get lots of documentations how to write these kind of things. And then university's vice chancellor or maybe the dean can approve after reading it. Some journals, they need, or most of the journals, if they have patient or animal data or children data, they need that whether you took the approval from the authors. And in one of cases, one of my papers, what happened that we did not take, because all our students, adults, but still the journals asked for us. Then we collected all the students, and then they put signature, and then we submitted the document that, okay, we collected the permissions, and then we submit. So these are important. Take a break. Okay, I know that some of you can say that when the talk will be finished, but it will not be finished. So take a break means that if you do not find major flaws in a paper, really take a break, giving you time to think about the paper. Wow, I mean, as a reviewer, how much effort should I give? So yes, you need to give, especially if it is a good journal, or top conference, you need to judge very professionally and very carefully. So take a break to think about the paper, and then explain and support your judgment to fully understand the reasoning behind your comments. Whatever you say should have a logic. It's not like husband and wife's, jhagrajati or fighting, that no logic, without any reason. Sometimes we argue each other and no one is winning, or sometimes one party is winning. You should indicate whether your comments are your own opinion or it is based on some data or evidence. If you take from data or some evidence, of course you should put some references from those journals or conferences, and it is important. Otherwise, only your opinion, if you write for authors, you can argue, which is called rebuttal. You can fight and mention very politely that whatever you said, your opinion is wrong because blah, 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 and you put references on your argument. So authors or reviewers, you have the right to fight each other and do it based on logic and rationality and based on references. Reject or accept it without revision, it's usually never happens. Revise either major or minor, and we know that we have to. And another point is that for reviewers, that you finish the review and you forget it. But when the authors submit the revised paper, we need you to review the paper again. Check whether the authors explained or addressed your important points or not. So please come back soon so that you can do the revision again. But sometimes we find that the authors cannot come. So it's a dilemma, it's a problem that when the revision comes, we need to search for another reviewers. And another reviewers need more time to read everything and so on, and previous comments. So that's why for authors, when you submit a revision, you put all the review comments of the past reviewers one by one and answer the points in a document. Of course, you put in the paper, but you explain it so much that if a new reviewer looks into your submitted reply and quickly can be satisfied with the paper. So this is very good strategy for authors. So but now the point is that how many reviewers to invite. Scientific reports Nature, they say that 6 reviewers, according to their study, that 6 reviewers need to be invited on average to secure 2 reviews. So tiny tuna pass 33% you can get that it is done. So this is very important. So we must consider 6 and 6. I know that some of you are not listening and watching IPL, but make sure that you listen. Personal relationships and financial interest, conflict of any interest, if there is anything, make sure that you decline and learn to say no. This is important. Does the work fall within your area of expertise? This is another important point. If not, then you can decline. And according to Frontiers publishers, they say that each reviewer should hold a PhD or years of experience in a relevant field of research. Because if you are not a PhD, but you are working on a specific field and you have good publications, so you are eligible to be a reviewer. But as I mentioned at the beginning, that Optical Society of America, the Optical Society, they say that if someone is a graduate student means master's or PhD student, and he or she has papers or research on the relevant field, they can also serve as a reviewer. So that is another point. The manuscript that make recommendations regarding patient treatment, you or at least one, this is important, that if the paper has any patient related treatment or healthcare related issues, or I mean critical issues, then make sure that you as a reviewer, editor, or at least one of the reviewers can judge the clinical application of the paper. Similarly, if there is a paper which is basically based on mathematics or pure algorithm or statistical in-depth analysis, and you are not expert to judge that part, make sure that at least one of the experts on that field, like if a paper is on fuzzy, search someone who is expert on fuzzy. If a paper is on deep learning, like some people, they use deep learning as a tool and do the work done. So you don't need to be expert on that. I mean, deep learning expert that much. But if a paper is improving on the machine learning method or deep learning method, then you need someone related expert who can dig into the method itself. Okay, because don't judge on the look. I mean, nowadays we are in the makeup world. I mean, you take a mobile phone and photo and do some processing, you become so beautiful that you fall in love. Research paper, first look is important, but even though it looks good, don't think that you need to fall in love with the paper and get it accepted or quickly and so on. So look into the method clearly or critical issues clearly, judge it. Unless and until you can judge, don't give the decision. Or whatever decision you give, you make to the confidential comment to the editor that I do not know, I cannot judge the authenticity of this paper and so on. Next is another topmost journal, International Journal of Computer Vision. What they say that it is also important for authors, that how you improve. Authors should have sufficient information to understand the basis of your criticism. Like reviewer must criticize so that it is clear. I mentioned at the beginning that some of the points will be repeated again and again so that we can keep those in our mind. And number one is enough importance for this journal. Is the paper technically sound? If the paper is original, and make sure that whether there are some material that should be kicked out from the paper, no need, because sometimes some authors write so trivial things and put too much information which are not relevant. I mean, relevant, but not so much necessary. It's not a project work or not a thesis, or there are some page limits as well and so on. And if anything to be added in the paper, and make sure that the references of earlier contributions and recent top journals and top conferences are added in this paper. Make sure that research design is appropriate and methods are properly described. Results are clearly presented and your conclusions are supported by the results. And English language is also important because papers are written in English and in style. So make sure that our language is, it is a problem that most of the developing countries, they mention that, okay, go for a professional writer without looking into sometimes I found that the reviewers, because I can see who are the reviewers himself or herself is, I shouldn't say very strong word, but I say that the review comment, what he or she wrote is poorer than the paper. So, but still, I mean, reviewers say that improve your English or go for a professional writer and so on. And sometimes it's a business. Some journals like MDP, some journal groups like MDPI and so on, they clearly say that go for I mean, professional editing and so on, so that they can earn money. Because I just tell you that professional editing in Japan, sometimes 1 lakh yen, I mean, 100,000 yen minimum charge and more. So it's unbelievable. So, so that's why when you submit a paper, make sure that there is no typo, no mistakes, no formatting problems. And Grammarly.com can give you free checking, and also make sure that you do not write long sentences, and also not Facebook chatting type sentences. And these are very important. So authors should be very careful, and reviewers should check the language as well, so that it has good readability and so on. Plagiarism, if there is any, but most of the journals or conference committees, they do by themselves, but still you can do it. And if you have the access to check the plagiarism, do it first. And if you get for something common, then you can easily reduce your efforts, and I mean, no need to review the paper that if there is a paper. But now the point is that there are some archival websites without peer review, they archive the paper. And plagiarism checker thus checks whether there is any materials in the website. So sometimes you can get 100% same paper. So when you submit a paper, and if that paper is also already in the archive, or in a website, or in the thesis which is online and open access, you tell the editor that in the cover letter you can mention, or in the editor and so on, authors, I'm saying to the authors, you mention that this is there, but this is not copyrighted. If it is not copyrighted, then no problem. Okay. Another point is that inappropriate self-citations. I do, everybody, I mean, does that. We cite our previous couple of papers or more based on, but make sure that it is appropriate. I mean, if not relevant, then do not cite. If there is anything, this is also wrong. And if a paper has, I mean, something like this, you can report to the authors that, I mean, you remove this and so on. Ethical concerns, of course, make sure. And authors should know that these are the points reviewers check, whether originality or novelty is high or average or low, and no answer. Now, your paper may not be very much original, but make sure that the content is significant. Make sure that your quality of presentation gets high, content is high, scientific soundness, explanations and so on, analysis, interest to the readers, overall merit, those you get high. If you get originality, novelty, even though low, overall you have more points to get the paper accepted sometimes. So this is very, very important. Don't overlook. Some students, they submit paper, but they don't check other points and so on. Presentation is the abstract, adequate digest of the work you reported. So abstract, I find many papers, and you also get that abstracts first 3-4 sentences are just introductory words which are useless. So make sure you do like this, and reviewers should address this kind of things. And in the introduction, background is good or not, summary and conclusions adequate or not, clearly, I mean, do the authors explain clearly what they have done? Is it clear? And what they did was worth doing, and this kind of things. Order of presentation is important. But some journals, you find that the order of presentation, especially scientific reports, nature, their order is that they put the method later part, they want the results at the beginning. And some other journals also, they have different strategies. So make sure that you just do not submit a paper without following the template of that journal. Okay, if you do that, sometimes we can consider that your paper was rejected in another forum, so you just quickly submit to another journal. So make sure that you submit in such a manner that reviewers or editors can feel that, oh, this is only for us. Okay, the food in the plate is for me. Okay, is the order of presentation satisfactory, English and so on. I'm finishing very quickly. This is for IEEE SMC, one of the largest societies. What they say, if you recommend rejection, then please copy paste one of the following reasons for rejection. Number one, insufficiently original, it lacks quantitative result or conclusion, poorly written, methods not sound, lacks impact, significance, or practicality, experiments, validation are not validated, and so on. So it means that when you write a paper as young authors or whatever Buddha authors, make sure that you check all those 5-6 major points, and your paper, I mean, my point is that before you submit, be a reviewer. And you can be reviewer by different ways, like a very harsh reviewer, mild reviewer, non-expert reviewer, expert reviewer. So judge your paper in 4-5 ways and read the paper 4-5 times, and then edit and improve and then you submit. Okay, sometimes your paper needs information or clarity for less expert people. And in one of the slides, I mentioned that reviewers should check whether the paper is like that. With that, I would like to conclude the presentation, and I thank the organizer for this arrangement. And this is based on my experiences overall, and lots of kicks from many reviewers. And by the way, some of you may ask different questions which are related to paper writing and so on. You can get this kind of information in mm, uh, my website I mentioned here. Uh, why did it jump? Okay, so if you look at here, ahadvisionlab.com notes. So over there, I put some YouTube links for English and Bangla lectures, so you can find those. I think this is all about, and thank you so much.
Uh, Thank you for a long talk. Actually, there are several issues has been addressed for the reviewers as well as authors. Now, we would like to open the discussion sessions. There are several questions as that. Uh, can I explain, or can you yourself will present your question? I see there is a question from Muhammad Khalid Hossain.
Okay, I saw the question, which is about
Yeah.
a conflict of interest. So there are two different things. Conflict of interest means that one side is from the side of authors. When you submit a paper, you make sure that there is no conflict of interest, like authors and the fund who gives. I mean, there is no conflict of interest. And for the reviewer part, you must check that uh, n- none of the authors are known to you or friend of you or from the same department or same university. These kind of things, I mean, you need to make sure. So these are the basically conflict of interest. So I just put, I share from another slide. You can have a look here that authors declare in a paper that there is no competing interest, which means that no personal interest or no financial relationship with others. So it is basically, I mean, important for medicine related or drug related industry, because maybe your research paper has some findings which can be directly or indirectly helping any drug company or any other company for their product. So if there is anything like that, that you have relationship with them or you are working with them. So for example, if I work in a robot company, at the same time I'm working in industry, university, and I'm writing a paper and I'm giving something and praising something and so on. So it is better to mention, and the committee will decide, or the authority will decide, or editor will decide whether they can consider this paper seriously or not. This is one point. But when you are a reviewer, you make sure that you do not know anyone. I mean, in person, of course, in the community, we know all the related people. But if it is my friend or my former students or my supervisor, or my co-authors, even if 10 years before co-authors, and then it is better to, I mean, it is very important that you mention and you avoid. So that is important. So what Nature say in the Nature website, they say that Nature research journals require authors to declare any competing financial and or non-financial interest in relation to the work described. The corresponding author is responsible, and so on. And another point is that there is a chance that the money can put some kind of potential influence on the judgment, and so on. So these are the few things. So I hope I could give you a little bit on this.
Another question has been asked by Ridwanul Mustafa. He asked that what should I comment if I found the paper is just copied from another one?
Okay,
That is
so
plagiarism issues.
yeah, I mean that this is very easy. Like if you find something like that, you just report to the. So if you are a reviewer, you can just make sure give the link that this paper is copied from here, or this work is like this. Even the idea is important, that sometimes if the same idea is done differently, you can mention in the review comment that what are the new in your idea, or did you copy that idea, and so on. But of course it depends on the level of the journal or conference. If the level is low, then you can try with different ideas. Of course you put reference and so on. But if it is a good top journal or top conferences, then if you just try another idea, even if you put reference, it will be definitely rejected. Now, if someone is copying another method directly and not referencing and not mentioning, then this is pure cheating and plagiarism. So that is punishable act. And all journals and conferences, they punish, and report and ban some authors. Like IEEE, they have a list. They call it PAL, P-A-L. Okay, this is prohibited authors list. Each year they update the list with the criminals, or by mistake. I shouldn't say by mistake, but some of the students, they do like that, without understanding and so on. So another point is that whatever you see similarity based on writing, in plagiarism checker, don't worry that much. As a reviewer, you just don't say that 30% plagiarism, 40% plagiarism and reject. No, because that when they check, like IEEE checks, they check authors, all the references, and if you have 3 or 4 consecutive words similar, only 3 or 4 words similar, then they mark it as similar to one source, and overall 30, 40, 50% they mention. But you make sure that whether the similarities are on the introduction or related work, or based on their previous method, or when they explain a method, there is, like, if I mention deep learning, so definitely there will be some similarity with thousands of papers. Okay, but make sure that overall method, result, analysis, and these kind of things are properly written. There is not copy paste, like one paragraph or few sentences one after another, or many things like that. So as a reviewer, please judge properly. And if you understand that the author or the corresponding author or the first author seems like a student or not experienced, teach or guide him or her as much as possible so that they can learn. Okay, so this is another. I find that if another mentions any reviewers or groups not to assign, does it create negative impression? No. I found a paper which as in associated I managed in Scientific Reports Nature. They say they are working on autism and others, and they mentioned it's from top university. I'm not mentioning because it's still not published. So very top groups, they said that they submitted the paper to another top journal, and Professor X, Professor Y, and Professor Z, for example, they did not like the idea, and they vehemently, aggressively saying that this shouldn't be accepted because it's a new and different concept. For that purpose, they mentioned in the cover letter that do not assign the papers to them. But as what I did, I assigned them as well to see what they say. And I mean, they gave some feedback and so on, but at the same time, I found some bigger people and very professional people related to that. And I also checked multiple review comments. And finally, the judgment, I mean, was given. So there is no problem if you put someone that not to, some journals clearly, they have option that your I mean, recommended reviewers 4 or 3, these are compulsory. And there are some cases that you don't like them to review your paper. For example, your former supervisor is not happy with you anymore. You finished your PhD, but that guy is somehow unhappy because you are not working with him, or you forgot him, and he is, I mean, just depressed because of your love. Okay, so if that happens, then you can mention that don't assign to him or something like that. So this is not a
Thank
negative
you.
thing.
Thank you, sir, for your clarification.
Thank you. Another question from Professor Dr. Shamsul Arifin, sir. He asks that if a quality paper from developing countries is tougher to get accepted compared with the similar quality paper from a developed country, can you comment on this issue?
I mean, I mentioned in the 2 or 3 slides that racism is real. It is very painful. Racism is real all over the world. We are more or less human being. We are racist in different levels. It's not about only black or white or Muslims or Hindu or whatever. It's in the academia as well. I mean, some of the cases we have research groups, they are good groups. So if one of them are authors, then usually people feel confident that the paper can be accepted or not. Because of language, I found many cases they say that the language is not good, but the paper is not about the language. You can comment on the language and give the author to improve it. But most important point is method itself, the result itself, and authentic explanations and so on. But again, from the developing countries, because some of you know that I have been working for few conferences for almost 10 years, and on an average per year, I personally check about 500 full papers. I repeat it again that on an average for the last 10 years, I check 500 full papers. I open each paper, read the papers and read the comments and so on. And I find that most of the papers that are rejected vehemently by the reviewers are from developing countries. The main reason, even though most of the many reviewers are from developing countries, the main reason is that many cases we find that the paper is written in a very poor manner. It's not a professional writing, and and there are, just looking at, there are many mistakes. So that is the main reason. But again, racism is there, and we can overcome the racism by writing very professionally. And I recommend that you use LaTeX. Images are very high quality images so that it looks very chokchoka and very good, good looking. Just like, I mean, nowadays, I mean, you go for makeup. That's the point. That, I mean, 20 years, 10 years before when we married, we didn't have that much makeup. But nowadays, even for a birthday party, people do too much makeup. So in your paper, you also do too much polishing so that it looks better. But again, we must fight. We must fight for our rights. If we know that my paper has no problem, no, I mean, cheating, and the original work, and we tried this and that, we can say again and again, and even report to other associate editors and editor-in-chief that why the hell my paper is rejected without any proper guidance or proper comments. Okay, they must give original thing. And if they say that your paper is not good or bad, you can check whether similar kind of paper is available in their journal, and you can mention that your journal published this paper, this paper, this paper, which looks like similar to my case. Then why do you reject it? Because there are issues. This is important. And similarly, I found that many Chinese papers are rejected by Of course not top conferences by like normal conference or journal, because their writing is so weak that we cannot get clear view from the paper. So that is another point. But of course if someone China or Bangladesh or India or whatever, they write properly, then it's okay. Another cheating type things I find that when they write a paper, they don't clearly mention that we have proposed a method, or we have improved a method, or this is a paper we just studied based on this or that. So I strongly recommend that authors clearly mention, be honest. Honesty gets better value. Your paper cannot be or in terms of originality or novelty or mathematical foundation, it may not be very strong, but you mention it clearly so that reviewers or associate editors can get the point very clearly. So this year what we did for ICAV conference and others, that we put a contribution one sentence separately, so that from that we can clearly know what one sentence, what is the paper about. But still it is difficult. Some of the journals and conferences, they do like that. I think, but fight, you have to fight. If you get, not so much ground for your rejection. Sometimes it is seen in some conference that at the last moment, the reviewers are given so little time that they do not read well and write overall accept or overall reject. And the review comments are very poor type. The matter is very difficult for young researchers. Yeah, basically, but basically this presentation I have been preparing with that in mind, that developing countries like India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and so on. Malaysia is good, but it's still not that much. Arranging lots of conferences and reviewers, I find something like that. But again, the point is that uh, even though we assign many reviewers in ICIEV or IVPR or ABC conferences, we assign 6 to 8 reviewers and push them again and again. And those who review, you know that how many emails you get as a request and so on. But sometimes it happens that last moment, when the program chairs or general chairs or associate editors discuss together to make the final decision, when we read the comments, we may get that 2 different opinion, or 3 reviews but different opinions, or the opinions are not strong for the judgment of accept or reject. And when we read the full paper and look at the comments, we do like that. We give hours after hours to get a final decision. So when we do that, we find that the paper needs another professional evaluation or maybe another one. So conference committees, they request someone else at the last moment that please do check again, or you kindly look into this matter. We do like that, and luckily we have some good professional senior experts, and they help always. So we keep them, like you can consider those who are organizers that put 10% of the good reviewers as a backup last moment request purpose, so that when there is a conflicting issue, or you do not get the depth of the review of on a paper, then you can exploit their expertise. This is important. Abdullah Al mentioned, it can be seen that some papers have authors affiliation, even though the conference clearly mentioned that the paper will be double blind and so on. I understand, but don't be too much harsh. It is the responsibility of the conference committee to check it at the beginning and request the authors that please make it blind. But sometimes many authors, they don't know how to make it blind. They remove the author names and but they put acknowledgement, or they remove the author names but they mention their previous paper in the reference. So it becomes easier nowadays to know who are the authors. But it is better to have double blind to avoid racism or discrimination. But in top journals, conferences, I find, especially topmost journals, it is not possible. Like it becomes single blind. Like for when the final PDF is created by the system, then we see that reviewers, can see the author names and others. So yeah, some conference can do like this, that if it is not double blind, they can instantly reject the paper. But I recommend that, I mean, allow them, because those who make mistakes, this kind of silly mistakes, it means that they don't know what is the blind means. Okay, so it may happen that chok bondu kore paper submit kora means double blind. You just close both of your eyes and then push the button submit. But anyway, so this is one. Another question from Arafat, to validate the result, does sometimes the reviewer want source code from the authors? Yes, yes, yes. Authors can ask for the code. Some journals, they offer supplementary material to submit as a code. And in some cases, they just not only ask for the code, they also ask for the data itself. And they want to validate, especially top journals and the sensitive related works we need, because if you publish a very sensitive result by which a medicine or a, I mean, public decision can be done, a policy making can be done, then these kind of results are very important. So source code or source data you have to provide, and that's why authors must, reviewers must make it confidential, never to share to anybody. This kind of trust is very, very important. Martuja Ahmed, you mentioned, as a reviewer, if it is seen that a paper fully follow another previously published paper in almost all sections, including methodology using different similar data set, like published paper works, food data set, submitted works on flower data set. What should be the judgment? I mean, if you find that everything is similar, which is very common in many conference papers, and that's why I request our young researchers, do not publish second paper very quickly. If you are a first one, submit a paper and you publish, like using some machine learning, a data set and so on. But I know that we become greedy or maybe mentally motivated or excited. I don't say greedy. Some are greedy, of course, but I say that very motivated to publish another paper or another attend a conference. So what we do, that almost similar thing. I'm sorry for the greedy words, because very few people are greedy. I say that enthusiasm and with positive attitude, you try to submit to another place with slight modifications. Now it is up to the level of the conference or the journal to accept that or not. If the conference is a very low quality or a very recent one, they can decide based on their judgment. Because remember, there are conferences like computer vision and pattern recognition, IEEE CVPR, where uh, high quality journals, papers, and those CVPR papers sometimes are similar level. There are some conferences very low quality. So these are two different things. Another point is that if you submit to I recommend for the young researchers that do not submit to everything to IEEE or SCM, because it will go to the where? Archival, and then you lose your copyright. But if you submit that to as abstract or extended abstract or even full paper, but do not publish in IEEE Explore or anywhere else, so what will be the benefit? In Japan, I found in our conference, some authors, they say that we present the paper, but we do not give the copyright to IEEE. So do not send the paper to IEEE. We attend the conference, present the conference, present the paper in the conference. We learn from others, we share our ideas, and then we submit to another journal. So then there is no problem. So I mean, what Murtaza sir mentioned, that if there are huge similarity, definitely it should be rejected, because there is nothing new. But sometimes if the new analysis is very good, you can accept it. But of course, writing and other things should have some kind of modifications and so on. Especially nowadays, it is very important. Abdul Razak sir or whatever. I mean, not Abdul Razak sir, maybe. What? Anyway, I am from Tangail, belongs to physics department. Let me know how should I improve my writing skills. Thank you. If you carefully look what the reviewers want, you can know what to improve as a uh, mm, uh, as an author, number one. Number two is that Rome was not built in a day. We cannot improve our skill in a day. It takes time. Okay, so you will learn step by step, but the most important point is that whatever you do it carefully, give time. If you give time, then you can get more benefit. It's for research, it's for life, it's for family, it's for children, and so on. Okay, I'm saying about children, but I don't give time, unfortunately. I cannot give much. This is very sad for me, but I'm saying that, I mean, if we give time on anything, you will get results. So this is important. Now what you can do, that I put my website at the ahadvisionlab.com. Then I have some notes over there. You will find some YouTube link where I put some of the lectures on how to write, how to do research, how to check plagiarism issues or ethics and so on, in Bangla as well as in English. So those lectures can give you some help, I hope. But again, you need a team. And your supervisor, if you are I mean very young researcher, then find someone who can help you to improve your writing skill and ability. And most importantly, if you read top quality journals or top quality conference papers, I repeat it again, that top quality journals or top quality conference papers related to your domain, then you can see how they write, what are the styles they follow, and you can step by step follow those patterns. This is important, because if we look at the sky, we can go up. Okay, but if we read poor papers, scrap papers or so on, then we can never improve ourselves. My past, or many of our past, was very dark in terms of research and writing and so on. But now you guys are super lucky to have internet and so many open access issues, and coding as well, GitHubs, and so many lectures. Just spend time, hours after hours, improve your skill. All of you can be super excellent. I mean, forget about the past, what we did. Today I'm giving lectures on those. If I could learn this kind of things 20 years before, 15 years before, definitely I should be much better. But what I'm saying based on my learning ideal situation. But if you look at me, I'm not that good at all. Most of the cases, my writings are very weak, or I mean, I get lots of kick. My back is still in pain, by the way. Anyway, that's a joke. So, okay, Abdul Razak sir is a faculty. Thank you.
Okay, sir, another question was in the earlier post from Kanis Mariam. She stated, could you share an example of a good cover letter, or what are the properties of good cover letter?
Okay, very nice question. So, I think one of my lectures it has, but anyway, first of all, if you Google, you can get some guidance. But again, I'm saying in the cover letter, you mention in 1 or 2 sentences, or what I do, in 1 or 2 sentences, that the paper is original, unpublished, and not submitted elsewhere. This is very important. You should not submit a same paper, similar work in more than one journal or conference at the same time. So you make it clearly that it is unpublished, or not submitted elsewhere, not under review, and it is original work. And if you have anything ethical issues, you clearly mention that the ethical issues are considered or approval is taken. And then you mention that you think that your work has something excellent. I mean, of course, you have to praise yourself. Okay, in this case, that your work is something very good, and you feel that this journal is suitable for your work. And you can also mention, if your work is not that much related to the journal, you can mention that you, if you genuinely look at the journal, other papers, that you looked at other similar papers and you find that the journal is a very suitable one for your excellent work or new findings or new results. Highlight few words, maximum 1 or 2 sentences in what are the core things and attractive things. Because sometimes if the cover letter, by reading the cover letter, I feel confident on the paper, then I may find a reviewer not so strong or rigorous. But if I find that the paper looks like not so good, so what should I do? And I am not convinced as well. So I can search for someone very strong to see whether the paper can be judged by strong reviewers and so on. So that is why it is important as well. So the cover letter, don't make it too large. Make it very simple. And another point is that in the cover letter, you can mention if you have a past record of publications of the similar work, past, like we published the paper in a conference, and if you get a best paper award, for example, you can mention, or if this work's previous is published in a good journal or good conference, you can mention. That will give the reviewer or the associate editor a confidence on you at the beginning. Because you are unknown to him or her. And of course, you mention all the authors one after another when you thank, best regards or thank you very much and so on. You put all the authors one by one. That will be another important part. And if someone is like IEEE fellow or at least senior member, senior member is nothing, because if you apply after being IEEE member for a few years, automatically you get it. But still, SMIEEE if you are, or if you are professor or something, you can mention over there in the cover letter. Give a confidence on your paper so that editor or associate editor can get it. But if the paper is checked initially by staff, like business journals do, they have professional staffs. So bad. Like I shouldn't, because it is recorded, so I shouldn't mention the publisher. But if top pub, good pub, they have impact factor. The journal has impact factor more than 3. They tell me that if I review within 5 days, how is it possible that a paper published in an impact factor 3? So that's why it is important that don't run for impact factor always, because sometimes the journal is open access, so you get lots of easy citations, and it gets up and up and up. It doesn't matter. Okay, so for example, scientific reports Nature is no way better than, for example, some related journals which has even impact factor half of that. MDPI censor is no way comparable with the IEEE censor journal, for example. Okay, so that's why you remember, we don't need to look at only impact factor. Other issues are also important. Anyway, I see another Shamrat Kumar there. This query is from reviewer's perspective. Do you really think, is there high impact of author's affiliation, like foreign author, co-author, and so on, in accepting an article? Another is, what about your views on holding authors for outcome of the papers in a journal for month after month? Yeah, you pointed our pain. This is true. I find that some of us, they add foreigners. Number one reason, so that they can pay. I never like to pay from Bangladesh for a paper. 1 lakh taka, for example, to pay for a paper to be published in a open access journal. Never do it. 1 lakh taka, you can engage a researcher for 6 months. Give the money. He doesn't need to earn. One young researcher can get 10,000 or 50,000 per month, work, tremendously, and learn. Now the point is that there is no clear answer, but you know the answer. So, but better not to do that. Remain within yourself, unless you are working with a team, unless someone is the co-author. At an earlier stage, no need to add at the last moment. Okay, so what you can do, one strategy is that you at some point of your work, if you have nothing, nobody will look at you. Nobody looks after poor people. Okay, if you are beautiful, then everybody will look at you. If you are rich, then everybody look at your car and so on. Poor researchers, nobody will look at you. So if you have some work, then you request a related professor or somewhere, then request that I want to work with you and I have this level of works, can we cooperate, and so on. That will help you to move forward, number one. Number two is the person I mean, co-authors, foreigner or whatever, he or she can read your paper, give some perspective, which is very important. Okay, so it can help. So if you can engage with someone else, that is definitely better. But just to publish on the last moment and add, that is not so good. Of course, globally, when there is a collaborations or when collaborations between different faculties or different universities, it gives different flavor. And of course, as a reviewer or as associate editors or editor-in-chief, we like this kind of things. So this is one point. Number two is holding the paper. It is just basically injustice. That's why I also request all the reviewers, all the teachers who review, and all the young researchers now who will be reviewer in the future. If you can do it, accept it on the day. If you cannot do it, just decline it. Okay, and I know that some of you here who are organizing different conferences and so on invited me, and I did not reply properly. You are angry with me or not happy with me, and because I didn't do it on time, and it's, I mean, pending and pending and pending, and need to request again and again. But that happens sometimes. Okay, but associate editor or chief editor should act smarter and better. But what I mentioned in one of the slides, that as an author, you have the right to ask them in every 1 week or 2 weeks that what happens, what happens, what happens, I need, and so on. Hopefully they will check. And another point is that as an author, when you submit a paper, look at the journal. What are the average review time to get the accept? Some journals, they take 200 days. And if you need earlier, you do not need to submit there. Some journals accept, like MDPI journals, within 21 days, 25 days. I recommend not to submit there, even though I have a couple of papers, because those are very quick reviews, and I don't think that they give good reviews most of the cases, because anyway, no need for because. Uh, the third point is that see journals which are from good publishers but new journal, so there is a hope that they will accept relatively weaker papers because they are still not matured yet. Okay, so over there you can get. So what I do personally, I have an Excel file. Whenever I get any invitation for a good journal, or I check, I put the journal name, its impact factor, if any, or indexing, or what are the contents they publish, whether those are free or paid or no, not. This kind of information and quality levels and so on, I write down like 50 different journals and so on, based on different areas. And when I have a paper ready to submit, I look that file, and then I see whether any of those can be explored for submission. And on that time, I look at the website again, something like this. So you need to give time. I mean, unless we give more time, it is difficult. And remember, I know that most of the participants, maybe almost 100%, we are from developing countries, research-wise, poor countries. So our struggle will be more. But if we try to be professional, if we try to improve ourselves, give more time, then it will be improved, definitely. Remember, if you are poor, I visit your home, you have not much food to serve me, but if you give lots of time, whatever food you have, you serve me very smartly, very clean manner, and wonderfully, that is wonderful. That's why, I mean, empathy in life is important. So your paper should get this kind of things. Anyway, can I share my paper in ResearchGate or other sites if the publishers do not allow a free access? See, if the paper is not allowing you, you should not upload anywhere. This is bottom line. But privately, people can ask you and you can share the paper to him or her. It is done because we know this kind of things. So if it is not open access, though, you cannot. But I know that many top researchers, professors, they put there before the submission. Even today, for to prepare this presentation, actually just for remember, just to prepare for this presentation, I spent more than 20 hours. I could easily do very quickly, but I know that some of you will come, and as much as possible I can. 20 hours is not a joke for me or for anybody, but I gave 20 hours of time and I prepared this for over 2+ months. And for this purpose, I attended some lectures from editor-in-chief of Optical Society of America's one journal, two of them, and then few other lectures, so that I can try as much as possible, better and better and better. So this is important for paper as well. Can I have the PPT? Usually I recommend for everybody that don't ask for PPT to anybody. I mean, you can get the, I mean, for anybody, it's not for me as well. I mean, usually not to ask, it's better. Anyway, I think, oh, I have another question, Sadia Sharmin. You had earlier question, but I jumped it. Okay, can I, oh, no, this is Sadia Nabila. How can a grad student become a reviewer? I would like to know a simple guideline. Okay, so for example, grad students, if you are a master student or PhD students, usually we consider that you do research and you publish some papers. So in many cases, professors, they get papers and they assign the paper to the PhD students. In most of the cases, masters very rarely, unless the master student he I mean good has any good already published papers. So how to do, I mean, this is, as I mentioned, that very simple. Follow the steps and do it. If you do not know, then ignore it. But if you accept, and if it is related, more or less related to your field, and if you accept, then you study, you give more time. For example, now I have a paper to review. It is from a topmost journal, International Journal of Computer Vision, and it is on 3D human pose estimation. Now, I do not directly work on human pose estimation, but I work on human computer recognition, analysis, and of course, pose estimation in different way. But for this paper, I may need to study 10 hours or 15 hours and to see what are the best works, because otherwise I cannot judge the paper. Because I have to say whether it is accepted or rejected, if, I mean, minor or major revision. If I reject it, I must say that the paper has no original ideas or no novelty and nothing that much. And on the other hand, if I want to accept it, I have to mention that what are the core points in this paper. So that's why it is very important to learn. So don't decline easily, think carefully for young researchers, but make sure that it is related to your field. For small conferences or small journals, definitely not that much rigorous reviews are needed, but if you can give, the level of the conference or the journals will improve always. Sadia Sharmin, you have another question. I don't know the previous question though. You can ask directly. Is it good to share the paper in archive before it gets accepted or published? I usually do not do it, but many researchers, they do, because they don't care about this, because they publish. But this is an issue that by doing that, you are not keeping double blind if it is a conference. So this is one point. Another point is that if you worry that your idea can be captured by another group and they can do the work better than you and publish the work before your paper is accepted, then it is a risky issue. But nowadays, I mean, people put in archive a lot and so on. So I mean, I have no clear answer. So you have to decide. Till now, I didn't put anything, any of my works to the archive. I put in, I mean, under the hand of reviewers. Now at this moment, many papers under the hand of reviewers. I pray that all gets accepted, and I know that I am ready mentally that all can be rejected at the same time. Okay, and I'll cry.
Okay, there are many questions you have answered. Actually, this is the end of the question. Actually, at last, Professor of the Rajak, Chair of IEEE Computer Society, he actually left the session because of a meeting. He actually congratulates you for your tremendous efforts to share important piece of information with young researchers. And if there is any question, please ask with unmute directly.
Okay, I have a question here.
Yes, sir.
But the question came as a private message. Okay,
Okay.
so there is something special love with him, I guess. Shomrat Kumar De. Anyway, so I have submitted one article in a journal. Anyway, in a fast track submission. After 2 months, they replied minimum number of reviews not achieved. New review invitation is invited again. So frustrated. Yes, that's true. I mean, we get like this. I mentioned that one of my paper, 2 weeks, still not assigned to a reviewer. So I think we can just, that's why when you submit a paper, we request them that why the paper is not I mean under review and again. Like one of my PhD students, I mean not direct, I just joined the later part as a supervisor type. And I mean it took 9 or 10 months for a paper to be I mean get the decision. And because of it, that guy's, I mean 6 or 8 months, 6 months especially, one semester lost for his PhD, which is very sad. Because I mean and we emailed the editor-in-chief and the associate editor multiple times, but they were lazy and not so good. So that's why if a journal takes too much time, do not submit there. Okay, because unless you have a very confident mind that it will be accepted, and especially if any promotion issues are due, or if a PhD degree is due, on that case I recommend you to submit, because there are many journals, even from all top publishers, there are many related journals where you can get it. But reality is that some of us are reviewers, so it is our duty at the same time as a reviewer to make it faster and quicker. So I get Professor Rejaul Azim, please ask your question. Onegai shimasu.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Ahad. Actually, I was in other meeting with Bangladesh, IEEE Bangladesh section. So I have a simple question. Is it not necessary to introduce a honorarium for the reviewer? Because in this year, I have already reviewed 50 journal articles. So it is very tedious job. So
Okay, very good question. If that is the case, so I should be a millionaire. Okay. Anyway, so by the way, Professor Rajak is not here, but he thanked me, so I thank him as well. So now your question, I tell you, I am serving scientific reports Nature, and they, you know, this is a flat journal. Okay, they have so many papers, and definitely a reasonable level quality review is required. Again, I'm saying that I mean scientific reports, or for example IEEE access, those are not high quality cases. They accept even poor as well. But still, I mean we have to manage, and so much hard work years after years, still I get nothing, zero. I talked with an editor-in-chief of Elsevier, one journal, and the impact factor was about 2. It means that in computer vision imaging, that was one of the good journals on the time. So he was a keynote speaker in our ICIV conference in Bangladesh 6 years before. So he told me, I asked him that how much you get as an editor-in-chief, because it's a hell of work to do. He said that per year he gets a check, sometimes 3,000, sometimes 4,000 US dollar, and that's it. Not more, not less, something like that. And associate editors, because I served in IEEE magazine of Comsoc and some other journals as well, but we got nothing, zero. What happens that when we submit a paper, sometimes we get free publication. So this is one benefits we get. So now the point is that those journals who takes huge amount of money like MDPI or this kind of things, I really don't understand the why the hell so much money. If you consider that Sensors MDPI, they publish 4,000 papers per year. Can you imagine? And they charge, if you consider the $2,000 per paper or 1,500 US dollar per paper, how much money? And then I mean, reviewers get, of course, they give discount if you review a paper within 5 days and so on. So, I mean, it is impossible to get honorarium for journal or conference committees usually, unless they are like MDPI or others who takes huge amount of money. We know that IEEE started from this year that every society, they have a journal called IEEE Open Journal of something something something. They are starting to charge as well. So I asked topmost people, few of them, those I mean who are president or vice president level and so on, because I always consider our issues like developing country issues. They say that because there are huge costs related to the security, server management, and more stuffs to handle, so it becomes really important that they earn money through open access or something like this. And through this process, they try to continue the work. But apart from some business groups, all the journals, and nowadays, day by day, they are struggling more because as open access journals and those kind of business journals accept the papers quickly, gets the impact factor higher very quickly, and quick review time, and even poor pocha papers can be accepted in those journals than other journals having less impact factor. So free journals or almost free journals, they are struggling, even IEEE transactions and so on. So financially it is very important. So that is one of the major issue. For conference, even the area chairs, like even topmost conference, consider that CVPR. IEEE CVPR is the number one conference in computer vision and pattern recognition. They have usually 5,000, 6,000 registrations, and non-student means 1,000, for example, and student means 500 or 400, something like that, US dollars. So much money, and accepted papers are basically 1,500, 1,400 papers. Even the track chair, one track chair handles 100 or 150, 200 papers or more even. So much hard work because very high quality conference and within a short time, even they do not get anything. We do not get anything. What we get, that for the track chairs meetings or program chairs meetings, they organize in a big hotel for 1 week or 3-4 days. So you go, sometimes they pay, sometimes they give free lunch. Or some accommodation, or if someone needs, they give support or help. So the community is struggling, definitely. Those who are I mean, definitely there are a good number of people who are organizing different conferences in Bangladesh and others. We know that, I mean, how much difficult it is. You attended last year in ICIV, we had banquet of only $30-$35 banquet. Is it I mean, possible? How much efforts the organizer give, and finally it was even minus for them.
Yes.
And still under loan. And actually, from this year conference, we paid few thousand US dollars to a person who paid earlier. So the point is that it is not possible. So what we can do, we, if we are busy, we try to be selective to review papers, not to review every journals or every conference, or if it is very much related. But by reviewing, what is the benefit? We are helping the community. And at the same time, if we do not review, who will review my paper? Number 3 is, we learn by reviewing other works. We know what the better works are going on, what are the different perspectives are going on. So this process we learn. So that's why it is very important. So I think that we have taken plenty of time, and the organizers said that within 5 minutes to finish, and I think the 5 minutes is over.
Okay,
Almost,
thank
yeah.
you.
So if any of you have
Yeah,
any question,
I
please.
know the scene.
Anyway, so if anyone has any question, you can ask me by email, or better in Facebook Messenger, because it is easier to chat and so quickly. And you can see my lectures. And I also very strongly request that young researchers, Bangladeshi researchers and so on, don't just look at IEEE conference or SCM and so on. Don't think that this publication is worthy. If it is not good, nothing that much. Think about learning. So try to attend those forums, like IEEE Computer Society Bangladesh chapter will start soon a, conference or symposium type, paper will not be archived, paper will not be published anywhere, but you will submit extended abstract and you can present the paper. And through this process, you can learn. This is the most important thing. So whenever you get that student conference or non-archival issues, but you can present, jump on this and try to attend and try to learn. This is very important. And I request all the universities to organize this kind of small forums. And due to online, it is now easier to do. I hope that we try the best to change the future of our students. Our students are so brilliant, but we do not do much because we don't know what are the good levels and how to do. So if young researchers need lots of efforts to give, our teachers must give much more, must know what are the best strategies, what are the best works. And study is very important. Give time so that we can get better future. Yeah, thank you so much for your kind attendance.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, can I ask a question? One comment.
Please quickly.
Atiq sir. Yes.
Please,
Thank you
please.
very much for your nice presentation. Yes, is it possible to arrange some symposium or workshop? Maybe it's better we can join in online and learn something and present our work.
Yes, it is possible. Basically, IEEE Computer Society will start within, you will get the announcement within a couple of days that they will organize similar kind of things. And if it is not related to computer science or computer society directly, then we can introduce some other things, and those things will be helpful. And basically different forums they try. But I noticed that our people usually do not try to present if it is not in IEEE. But if it is not so good, then why? So what we can do, that we can, if my work is not so good, I can submit the paper as a student conference and not archival. You can mention that not for IEEE now. We get the paper accepted so that we can present the paper as a poster or short presentation and get feedback from others. Through this process we can learn. Yeah. But anyway, so if anyone is interested to arrange something, this kind of online presentation or forum or something, I have some experience as well, so we can discuss later, and with some others we can try to initiate something. Yeah, that is possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your long time in midnight. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Then we want to conclude. I think in Japan there is midnight actually, 12 o'clock and above. So thank you for your nice presentation as well as very long presentation and also question answer that helps our young researchers as well as our reviewers.
May I ask one question, please, just for a minute?
Please give your affiliation and answer the question.
My name is Tausif. I'm a lecturer in Southeast University. My question is, I did my master's in UK, so I submitted few reports, like assignments and everything. But when I submitted for a journal, those papers, after modifying few stuffs, they are saying it has been already submitted as a student work in the University of South Wales. So is there any legal obligation for that?
Thank you for the question. I'm not sure whether I got the question properly. So your work, what you have done during the masters,
Yes.
you didn't publish anywhere.
No, it's just university.
Yes. So you can publish it anywhere you want now. Now the point is that I mentioned maybe quickly that sometimes our papers or theses or this kind of documents are archived in the university websites.
Exactly.
So when plagiarism checker checks, they find that it is over there. So when you submit, you can clearly mention in the cover letter if there is an option for a cover letter. In conference, normally we do not have. So you can mention it clearly that this is not published anywhere at all, and this is in the university archive, it's available or something maybe. So
Okay.
on that case there will be no problem. Yeah, thank you.
No notification. Okay, thank you very much. I
Yeah,
was
thank you so
confused.
much.
Thank you very
No,
much.
thank you.
If I add with this comment, sometimes you can request your university library to open for all of the world people. So it restricts and it matches with the pluralism. So you can stop and request the library authority actually. So that is another solution. So by the way, at last we actually want to conclude our webinar. That was a very tremendous effort you have done for us. Actually, while we are conducting some seminars, conferences, we face some problems. Cannot get some reviewer, or if we assign some good reviewer, we cannot get good reviews. So I requested Atiq sir to prepare this presentation, and he has gone for the last 2 months, and it has prepared. So I would like to thank to Professor Atiq for tremendous effort from IEEE Computer Society Bangladesh chapter. He is also founder secretary of IEEE Computer Society Bangladesh chapter. So I think in the next time you also enrich us with different talks to our young community, young researchers. We always follow you and we always learn from you from every point. So thank you from all of us. Thanks to all participants and your valuable question and answering session. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure, and I learned a lot from different questions and comments as well. So by the way, sometimes when there are mistakes, we do not like to mention. So if you find anything to improve or any additions for future, you are welcome to email me or in Facebook Messenger without any hesitation, so that this presentation can be improved and this learning can be advanced for future as well. Thank you so much. I really appreciate, and thank you all for being with me for such a long time. And most of the time, I mean, more than 110 people. So it is really, really, uh, gratifying. And I'm thankful to the IEEE Computer Society Bangladesh chapter, and especially Dr. Hassan Habib for his tremendous efforts. Thank you all. সবাই ভালো থাকবেন। ধন্যবাদ।
লাইভ রেকর্ডে একটু প্রবলেম হয়েছে, সো আমাদের IEEE কম্পিউটার সোসাইটি বাংলাদেশ চ্যাপ্টারের যে ফেসবুক গ্রুপ আছে ওইখানে আমরা এই রেকর্ডেড ভিডিওটি পোস্ট করে দিব। প্লিজ আফটার চেক আফটার 1 or 2 hours. This address is facebook/IEEE-CSBDC. Okay, this recorded video will be available there. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir, and thank you all researchers and young scientists to join in this program. Thank you, everybody.